Hey guys, today I want to talk about finishes on Walthers. Now, I'm a pre-1946 Walther collector. That's how I started. Walthers and Lugers is how I got started. Again, almost 30 years ago. I bought my first Luger when I was in college. So, I know a lot about the finishes on pre-1946. There's guys out there who do the post-war collecting. I don't know a lot about post-war, so what I'm going to talk about today only applies to pre-1946 Walthers, which would be PPs and PPKs. So let's take a look. First of all, as most of you would know, about 99% of all the Walther PPs and PPKs were blued. About 99%. So that means only about 1% have any other finish at all. So 99 out of 100 times, when you see a Walther, you're going to see a blued gun. Now, the early Walthers, this is from the 1930s. They started producing this one in about 1930. The PPs were about 1929. But 1930s Walther is going to be a high polished blue. And you can see how beautiful that gun is. As the war broke out, the finishes began to degrade a little bit, and so at the end of the war, this is actually 1945. Now you notice they use a wood grip because they were running out of plastics. There's no legend at all, and you can see the machining marks on this gun. So the quality of production, they just didn't polish them. They just put a coat of finish on them and threw them out because they were going to war to the last bastion of defense in Germany. That's what I love about this particular era, because you can see the differences from the early high polish to the later guns. And the same is true, by the way, if you collect P38s, the same is true. You have the early high polish, which degrades down to a poor military finish, even phosphated finishes toward the end of the war. But now let's look at some of the really exciting stuff. So we're talking about just 1% have a different finish. This is what the Germans call verchromt, what we might call satin nickel. Verchromt finish. These were made early, and they're commercial guns. The reason they were made early is because they were trying to sell them to Germans and also all over the world, so they were kind of coming up with better finishes that people might enjoy. So before the war broke out, they did do a Verchromt finish. This is actually one of my favorites, by the way. The Verchromt finish, I think, is just really cool. The PP, they added the brown grip. PPK almost always had the brown grip, but those are examples of the Verchromt finish. Beautiful guns. Even more rare, we might see, and I say might see because there's a lot of confusion about the nickeled guns. Here's a nickeled PP that I believe is original nickel. Now, you'll notice this funny looking red magazine, and you're going to say it's got to be totally fake, but they actually did a chartreuse green and red magazine. The green is like finding a unicorn. They just never show up. I do have a couple of these red bottom magazines, and they are real, and they go with a nickeled gun. Now, the controversy about the nickel gun, first of all, they're pretty rare, but you do see nickel guns. So people say, well, I have a couple nickel guns, I've seen a couple nickel guns, and that's because the GIs, at the end of the war, they brought home souvenirs. And so here's a nickel gun. You can see the difference. You notice how the legend looks all filled in? And also, if you look at the proof marks, they've almost disappeared on this gun. So not only is this only 1%, but 9 times out of 10 when you see a nickel gun, it was a GI re-nickeled gun. At the end of the war, they brought home their souvenirs, and back then they liked them to be shiny. 9 times out of 10, if you have a nickel gun, it probably was done by the GI. Now here's the problem. It hurts the value. It's not original. It's not factory original. So where a factory original nickel gun might be $3,000 or $4,000, a GI nickel gun is worth about half of what an original blue finish would be. In fact, I have colleagues who would remove the nickel and re-blue it just because it takes it back to its original condition, although it's always re-blued. So in my opinion, leave it alone, it doesn't help it. Now, how can you tell for sure if it's original factory nickel versus re-nickeled? Really hard to say. If you're a modern gun collector, let's take pythons. I like pythons as well. If you take pythons, they come in blued finish, but they also come in nickel finish. Nickel actually increases the value, so some industrious people would take a blued gun and nickel it. But you can write to the factory and get a factory letter saying this was issued nickeled or this was issued blue. So you can prove it from a factory letter. The problem with the Walthers, the wartime Walthers, is there are no factory records. Everything was destroyed at the end of the war. So for me to prove that this is GI nickeled or factory nickeled is very difficult. I can only go from 30 years of collecting, the sharpness of the markings, the fact that it has some additional accoutrements to it, such as the presentation grips. That tells me, okay, this is a special gun because it's not normal. The best way for you to tell if this is original or not is to contact Legacy Collectibles. Really, if you just write to us, we're happy to help you out, because even though we don't have factory records, I have collected over 12,000 serial numbers, and they tend to come in blocks. So for example, everything on my records will be blued, 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 and then there'll be a section of maybe 3 or 4 nickel, nickel, nickel. They tend to take them off the factory floor, set them aside for a special order, and then continue with production. So the same is true with the engraved guns, which we're going to look at. These Vercrompt guns, they come in blocks. I'll have a block of 10 Vercrompt amongst all the blued guns. And then the nickeled guns tend to come in blocks as well. Every once in a while, is it possible that one was taken off the factory floor and nickeled? Anything's possible. But when I buy guns, if I buy it as original nickel, I like to see it in a block of other nickeled guns. Okay, my next finish is going to be chrome. Now, photographing chrome is really difficult. Actually, nickel is kind of tough because you get a lot of a flashback, and it's hard to see the finish. So I'm not sure how this would come out. But this is nickeled and this is chromed. I actually have some chrome PPs and chrome PPKs. These tend to be presentation guns. Special purpose why somebody would get a chrome gun. Again, very rarer than the nickel, but the chrome is a lot brighter than the nickel. You also notice the white grips, which are very rare. So this tells me that this gun was a special order. The fact that it has white grips is it presented to somebody. Just like collecting Colts, if you get a nickeled Colt with ivory grips, you know it had a special purpose. So again, I have some chrome PPs and chrome PPKs, a very rare finish. On this one, if you rub your finger on the proof mark, it's raised. This one, you feel it as well. You want to feel for it being raised, because when they stamp that, it raises the metal around the mark, and so the fact that it's raised means it wasn't buffed down and refinished. Finally, let's take a look at some silver and gold PPKs. This is a silver-plated PPK. Again, presentation white grip. So you can tell it's silver as opposed to nickel because of the tarnish, and the tarnish actually makes a nice contrast in the engraving. So this is factory engraved silver finish that's tarnished a little bit. A very rare gun. Not too many people have ever even seen one, but I have a couple of these. And finally, a gold. This is the creme de la creme, top of the line. Actually, the gold, you'll notice right away. This one is a brighter gold. I just pulled this out. The magazine that comes with this looks about like the gun itself. Because the gold wash, they actually nickeled the gun and then gold washed over top of it. The gold wash, I hate to even touch it because it comes off very easily. Original gold wash, you'll see it only in the crevices, and you especially notice it in the safety well. You can see the gold wash in there. But whenever I've seen an original gold wash, it's almost always completely gone. You can see this one has, again, special presentation ivory grips, so that tells me probably this was a special order. It also comes in with a block, a solid block of other engraved guns. My theory is that these would take up to a year or more to engrave, so they would pull them off the factory floor, they would send them to the engraver, engraver. It would take a while to get these done, so they might, even though this was pulled off in maybe 1938, it may not have been presented until 1940 because it took that long to engrave these. And you'll see even the floor plate is engraved. I pulled this out as an example of a gold finish, which might go really well with this gun, other than it looks too good. But my theory is this was re-gilded because it's too good to be true. I like for the gold finish to look about like that, because, and if you see it in the top, it has a lot less wear because it doesn't slide in and out. But you can see how it is nickel plated and then a gold wash over top. So those are the finishes that you will find in pre-1946 Walthers. Again, in review, most of them are blued. 99% are going to be blued. We do have the satin nickel for chrompt. We have a chrome finish, nickel finish, and remember, a lot of the nickel finish are GI re-nickels, and it drops from $3,000 down to $450. And then the silver and gold finishes. Enjoy your collecting career and be on the hunt for some of these treasures at your next gun show.